Horn-locked whale is my spirit animal, and we got the Wilds of Eldraine set for you.
Next on Eternal Durdles. Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles. I'm your host, Zach Clark, and with me as always, Phil Bleckman. Phil, how's it going, man?
Zach, are we the greatest content creators of all time, though?
Dude, we're pretty close. First off, thank you to everybody. We just hit 1,000, literally within a half an hour of the day, we hit 1,000 subscribers. So we're monetized now. YouTube pays us to be here, which is pretty amazing. On top of that, we wanted to, real quick, we wanted to give a shout out to our very first money-paying subscriber. Please forgive me if I screw up your name, but I wanted to give a specific shout out to our very first member subscriber, Andre Philippe Araval Zanetti. Andre Philippe Araval Zanetti, thank you so much for joining the membership on YouTube. If anybody else wants to do that, you get a bunch of cool perks and stuff like that. It also just helps us make the channel. It helps us keep going with the channel, and it's something we love to do. And knowing that we can set aside time for that, monetarily speaking, is a big deal for us. And so we want to thank you. We want to thank all our Patreon supporters. So if you're a Patreon person, you can go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles and support us there. Again, we try to make sure that we interact with everybody there, but YouTube is the main place we do all of our interactions. So hit us up there. You can also join our Discord. That's free. You could just do that. We've got a lot of people on the Discord, and that's a fun place to talk about Legacy and whatnot. And with that said, Phil, let's talk about the Wilds of Eldraine.
All right, so the only playable card is Horned Lock Whale, and there you go. There's the whole server. So for anybody that was watching, looking at my side while Zach was congratulating ourselves for having our first paid supporter on YouTube, thank you again. It helps because, as you saw, my mic broke. I just put it back together while you were doing that. So it's all coming together. We're the greatest content creators alive. What a day this is! 1,000
One of these
subscribers.
days, I'm going to be able to afford a better camera and a brand new microphone. And
okay, Zach, tell me why rats are going to be the best new
RATS.
Yeah, rats. The archetype coming to a Legacy event near you. Gonna crush.
I disagree.
Wow. Okay.
Ogre Slumlord will not see play in this format.
Dude, there are so many adventures to look through.
There are so many adventures. So let's just start it off, and we'll talk about. So we're gonna go over all the cards that'll see play, and I want to talk about some traps too. Very first trap is MoonShaker Cavalry. MoonShaker Cavalry is an 8 mana that is 5 and 3 white mana for a 6/6 flying spirit knight that when it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain +X/+X and flying, where X is the number of creatures you control. Phil, tell them why this is a trap.
Zach, can I natural order for that?
You cannot natural order for that. No.
Oh wow, I guess I'll never play it then.
Yeah, you can't Green Sun Zenith for it either. And so yeah, I think that's one of the main reasons. Also, just it being here's the other thing. I think a thing that people, especially in the EDH spaces, aren't really talking about when they're comparing this to Craterhoof Behemoth. Craterhoof Behemoth has haste. This does not have haste. Sell this. It's not going to be it'll be a card that people play in mono white decks in EDH. So when you get it, sell into the hype and get some of these other cards that we're going to talk about. But this card is one of those, it's a trap all over the place as far as I'm concerned. And there'll be some scenarios where you win big with this card in a casual format. But if you're a Legacy player, sell those and get Legacy cards. You're going to be way happier with that.
Yeah, man. So, also, just stop playing creatures altogether. Let me. Yeah. I don't want to have to put Swords to Plowshares in my deck. Let me take that shit out. Life. Yeah, let's just play on the stack.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. We don't know what that is.
All right. So our next card, Phil, is Asinine Antics. That is a sorcery for 2 and 2 blue, and it says You may cast Asinine Antics as though it had flash if you pay 2 more. So this is a 6-mana card if you want to cast it with flash. For each creature your opponents control, create a cursed roll token attached to that creature.
So the curse roll creature attachment roll tokens, they just make the creature that it's attached to have base power and toughness 1/1. It does not take away any of their abilities. It just changes the power and toughness to 1/1. The only area that I wanted this on the list was it's a blue sorcery that does a reasonable Wrath of God effect for any type of if the creatures are more than elves. In terms of the power and toughness, then this is a nice, maybe it's a Burning Wish target, but it is a blue wrath sort of effect. Also, when you move anything to base power and toughness 1/1 in an Orcish Bowmaster format, like that's not nothing.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something there, like this being able to hit like every part of like hitting a Death Shadow or the Troll or something. Now you got to get to that point in the game. Like 4 mana is a lot, you're never resolving it, but like that maybe there's a world where like you can convert some sort of synergies in that space without having to dip into outside of those blue and black. The other side of it though is there's maybe some combo potential depending on what you're playing against, because those cursed roll tokens are considered enchantments.
Yeah.
And so if there's anything that cares about, X number of enchantments hitting the board at the same time, maybe there's combo potential. That's all.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep, that's all about that card. A 6-mana combat trick maybe is in your future at some point. So the next card we want to talk about is Virtue of Knowledge. This is one of the very first of all of the new adventure cards that we were talking about. And so this one reads, it's a 5-mana enchantment, but its adventure is 2 mana as an instant, and it says, copy target activated or triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy, and then its enchantment effect is if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So I don't think we're really even worried about the 5-mana version of this card. Is there a space that we would want a like Strionic Resonator effect?
Bro, put this right into your Royal Assassin deck. Get it in there. Get it in there immediately.
That is an activated ability. I mean, I guess the areas that this could see play in, is like Storm decks or something, or like the thing that Phil, you just sent me a list of cards.
Shout out to Andrew who sent us in our Discord. If you're not in the Discord, join the Discord. He sent us a list of cards that have potential and different aspects or different possibilities of where those cards might shine. And in this one, he pointed out that Virtue of Knowledge, it is a 2-mana way to double up your fetch lands. So if you fetch the thing, like I am not high on this card at all, though. I get that there is something to be said about doubling your triggers, doubling your storm triggers. Mind's Desire just got unbanned, being able to tag that. But if we're at those space, like this is so much additional on top of the cake that I don't think it's going to see play. One area that
I think the big point he was making here was that it doubles your Candelabra trigger. Wow. Your activated ability of your Candelabra. Not a realm that I play in very often. That's far too rich for my blood. I like Death Shadow Nate cast because there's no reserve list cards in this deck. But if you want to double a Candelabra, this will do it.
That is true. If you are somebody who owns Candelabras and actively plays with Candelabras, then this card is the exact kind of card you would play, no matter how unplayable I think it is.
It's true.
Now, for the record, if I owned Candelabras, I would be that guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So let's talk about the very first card I think has potential to truly see play in this format, and that is Beseech the Mirror, Phil.
Beseech the Mirror, I think, is the slam dunk card of the set that's obviously going to see a ton of play. It is exceptionally good, and everybody's already talked about it, and we'll put in our 2 cents because that's what we do as the greatest content creators live.
Yeah.
But Beseech the Mirror, go for it.
Go. Oh, yeah. So Beseech the Mirror is 3 black mana and 1 colorless for a bargain. That means if you sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token as you cast a spell, you get an additional effect, sort of kicker with the sacrifice to it. search your library for a card and exile it face down, then shuffle. If that spell was bargained and the cost of the spell is 4 or less, you can cast that card for free. Then you put the exile card into your hand if it wasn't bargained.
Yeah, so it's a demonic, not demonic. What's the 4-drop
Diabolic tutor?
It's a diabolic tutor. At the baseline, it's the diabolic tutor,
which is bad.
Which is bad.
We're not playing that effect.
We're definitely not playing that effect,
purpose.
but that's the floor of the card, which is unplayable.
Unplayable.
But the upside is if you do bargain it, it just becomes a 0 mana tutor for whatever you're searching out because you pay 4 mana and then you get that 4 mana back at most on the back end.
So what are some good like 4-drops, let's say, that you would want to pick up for free? Search your deck and just play.
So my understanding is that the Storm community is halvesies on this card. Some people think that the bargain is way more difficult to pull off than they think, and others think that this card is just going to enable a bunch of turn 1 kills because it's just they printed it as 0 mana tutor, and that's pretty nutty. And the sequences that you have with cards like this. Because Tendrils is a 4 mana spell, which means that this effectively works as copies of Tendrils in your hand, but also opens you to performing additional tutor chains the way that Infernal Tutor chains used to work for Ad Nauseam Tendrils. So we've mentioned this on the cast before, but one of the axes, the way that old Ad Nauseam Tendrils used to win, is if their bottleneck wasn't mana, their bottleneck was storm count, then what they would do is, they would be going off, they would Infernal Tutor for Infernal Tutor for Infernal Tutor for Infernal Tutor, get the storm spell and kill you, right? So that's called a tutor chain kill, and that's where it can arbitrarily inflate the storm based on the amount of mana that you have, and then dome your opponent with the Tendrils. Beseech does the same thing in that if you have spells, if you can bargain the copies. Right, so like an example that somebody was like, you can sort of go off
like
early,
Lotus Petals or something, yeah.
Well, the thing is, you can sack tokens. So, like, there was some people were talking about how you can sort of like go off a little bit early, not spending as many resources to just play and empty the Warrens in the early game, and then you can then use the Goblin tokens as bargain fodder, so that way you can do a Beseech chain. And Beseech is just going to be free storm equal to the number of Beseeches, so that you can bargain, and then you can go for a Tendrils and kill that way. So. And that line doesn't use the graveyard, so there isn't a way to necessarily disrupt it, but with that kind of disruption.
And you don't have to be hellbent, which is a risk.
You don't have to be hellbent, and so there's a lot of upside to that space. The other side that this opens up is it lets you cast the spell for free, which the big get that I've seen for the storm list that I've seen that want to add this card is Gaia's Will, which is just the suspend version of Yawgmoth's Will.
That's Yawgmoth's Will.
Yeah. So it's just Yawgmoth's Will. It's suspend. It has suspend 4 for green, and that's not a playable card. You're not suspending that card. No. You will never play that card. But
I don't even play it in EDH.
If you don't have to pay the mana cost, then you can Beseech it out of your deck for 0, which means that Beseech bargained is effectively Yawg-Will.
Yeah.
And I think we have to just double check me if I'm wrong. That when the Beseech tutors the card, it goes to exile, and then you can cast it if the mana value is 4 or less. It doesn't say cast it. You can cast it without paying its mana cost as mana value 4 or less. So when you cast it, my understanding is that the Beseech falls off the stack so that the Gaia's Will still sees it. Or does Gaia's Will not even care because it's just literally Yawg-Will? Either way.
Yeah. I'm not positive, but it seems good either way.
I don't think it's a relevant line.
You can cast it again, I guess. Yeah.
Well, the line, if the way that it works is you Beseech, you Yawg-Will your entire graveyard, which effectively means that you have now passed in flames for whatever you want, and then you just do that chain. It goes to the graveyard, and it can be disrupted that way. But at the same time, it just like does it all in one card. Like it condenses slots. The way that I've been thinking about Beseech the Mirror and like why maybe I'll put the Swords to Plowshares down for a second to pick up some LEDs is what I feel like Beseech does, and there's going to have to be some additional alterations to the deck to ensure that you can bargain it reliably. But what I see Beseech doing is it's narrowing a bunch of slots in the deck down, similar to how like Thassa's Oracle fixed Cephalid Breakfast and Doomsday. Right? It just took a bunch of slots that the deck otherwise needed, those decks otherwise needed, in order to have a kill condition, and condensed it down to like way fewer slots in their
Yeah.
deck, and it's just a better card. So like for those who remember back in the day, Cephalid Breakfast had to play Angel of Glory's Rise, which is an unplayable angel that would reanimate Azami Lady of Scrolls and Labman. And so that's like a bunch of slots. So like it's still reanimated. It was the same package of like Narcomoebas and Dread Return, but it would bring back the angel, which would bring back those two things. Then you would tap to draw a card, and then in response to a removal spell, you could tap to draw a card again. So it beats a removal spell.
Yeah.
But like that's a lot of slots and a lot of unplayable, uncastable cards in your deck. And Thassa's Oracle just is cheaper and condensed all those slots down to one card.
Yep.
And you can also cast it in the early game, and if it dies, it doesn't matter. You're just going to Dread Return it back anyway. So it was a wizard that you can tutor for. But like it condensed those slots down. And that's what I imagine Beseech the Mirror is going to do for a lot of the Storm decks. But like the Storm decks between old Ad Nauseam Tendrils maybe getting a boon here, particularly because Mind's Desire was just unbanned. And then also Epic Storm, which has essentially become like this galvanic relay list that's now also using Mind's Desire sometimes instead of Ad Nauseam. They've just been retinkering with that deck because of the unban. And now they're going to have to retinker with it again because of Beseech the Mirror.
Well, let me throw two things out here. One, Tony Scapone is gonna love this card.
Yeah, like, Black Saga Storm's gonna love this, man.
It's just made for Black Saga Storm.
Yeah. So, wait. Do you have constructs that you just want to get rid of? You want to Beseech the Mirror too?
Is it time to? Yeah, it's time to get rid of the constructs. Next, is that like this gets the One Ring. Like you could be like some kind of a like Grixis control build, where you go get the One Ring, or and you're casting the One Ring. That's a cast, right?
Yeah, Orcish Bowmasters didn't need to get any better, man.
Yeah. Or you could go get your Orcish Bowmasters if that's what you need at the time.
I mean, Bowmasters makes the token that you can sack.
Yeah. I'm saying it like sorcery speed. That's that, you know, maybe you don't want to get Orcish Bowmasters unless you're just like, I need a value play. Also, like 4 mana, like what's the other best 4 mana card in this set? It's in this format is Miskenboo. If you're like a Jund deck, if you're Reed Duke, you're thinking about this card, man. You're thinking, you know what? I've got Ignoble Hierarch, right? I've got, I've probably got something as a token to sacrifice in some capacity.
Bowmaster is the token. I think that's the to jump through. But Bowmaster is free in this format. But like, I don't think for Bowmaster alone is enough to convert your bargain. You need something else, particularly if you know, like, let's say you're playing your deck, right? You're playing 8-cast, and you know that they have Beseeches, and you have access to any kind of, like, you know, an Otawara or something. You can position the game where you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to go after the token, so they can't Beseech me.
Here's the thing, though, Phil. Look, Diabolic Tutor is not playable in Legacy. I 100% agree with you. But a Diabolic Tutor that some percentage of the time does give you a free thing, or more than some, like more often than not gives you the free thing, is playable. Like if you're in a situation as like a Jund player where you're like, I do need a specific card, but I don't have the token. This is not the worst card to have in your hand, you know? Like there are times when you top deck a Thoughtseize and you're at 2 life, or your opponent has no cards in hand. You know, there are cards in that deck that are not like the optimal card, but this is, if you can reliably cast it, this is whatever card you want it to be, as just a bad tutor, you know, like, which is not nothing. Like to qualify that statement, I would not play a 4 mana Boomerang if I had to, but because it also can be a land in my deck, I play Otawara, you know, and more often than not, I'm bouncing stuff with Otawara. You know, I'm playing the quote unquote worst part of that card, just because like I know that there's value there. So I don't think it's crazy to think that Beseech the Mirror might occasionally be cast without bargaining it. I don't think that's the optimal play by any stretch of the imagination, but it's going to happen occasionally. But I say all that to say this. If you can reliably sacrifice that token in a deck, or even somewhat reliably sacrifice that token, being like, I guess I'll just tap 3 things and go and get a Miskenboo and put it into play for free. You know, that seems pretty good. Like, I don't know.
Here's for all you Jund sickos out there.
I mean, I'm not one of those guys.
We're focusing on the token because the token is the easiest thing to make in the worlds of Urza Saga and Orcish Bowmasters and whatnot. But like, you can get your oath, get your Oath of Nisses on, man.
Yeah. Or maybe you've had enough of your Sylvan library, or you have 2 Sylvan libraries. You know, like all that stuff is possible.
Yeah, there's the people who are still casting Baleful Strix. Like there is nobody wants to point the removal spell at the Baleful Strix, but if you can bargain it and then convert it into something else, it's not bad. It's pretty good. You know a space that I was looking at this in, something that's always in the back of my mind, not playable, but like Urza Thopter Sword in Legacy is always a space that I've been
Tesserator,
like,
Tesserator's a deck that hasn't seen wide play for a while, but like this could be a thing.
That deck or those kinds of decks always are filled with so much of that sort of like fluffy game piece making stuff in order to convert. But like,
and it's so hard to deal with. Like, how does Miracles deal with Thopter Sword?
It doesn't. You die. Miracles doesn't deal with anything. but like in that sort of space, when I was like trying to think of like what is the stuff outside of Storm that like would like this deck where you're like, oh yeah, maybe Jund uses it and makes it a big value play as a way to tutor out of your deck when you want something in particular. Then I was like, yeah, if you have like Thopter and you just sack literally anything to make the token on their end step, and then you untap and beseech and then put Urza into play, like the game ends.
Yeah,
you know, like that's kind of sweet to be like, all right, I'm gonna threaten making a token untap beseech kill you. Like that's kind of hot.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about Twinning Twins. Twinning Twins is another adventure. This is a 4-mana 4/4 with Flying Vigilance and Ward 1. Or its Swift Spiral is its adventure, which is 1 white for an instant adventure. Exile target non-token creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step.
It's a flicker.
I think the important part of this is not just that it is a flicker, like it is a flicker with utility. It doesn't say that you control. So like, you know, this can buy you a turn if something's attacking you that's big. It just gets rid of what's it called? Merit Lage, you know?
It doesn't. Non-token creature, my guy.
Oh no, non-token. Well,
we got got. And that is why I don't think it sees play.
That's fair. The only reason so there's going to be decks that want a flicker effect, but I don't know if it's going to be this
I was saying
card.
maybe there's a space where this moves, you know, the initiative sickos into blue.
Yeah, maybe. That could do it. All right, let's talk
Bro,
about...
you want to pour one out for Quirion Dryad?
Oh man, Quirion Dryad, you done.
We hardly knew ye.
Hardly knew ye. So before we talk about Quirion Dryad, we got to talk about Cruel Somnophage.
Cruel Somnophage is a 1 and a black for a nightmare, and it has an adventure of 1 and a blue. It says target player mills 4 cards, and then its creature side is its power and toughness are equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards. Now, it does not have the +1 like Tarmogoyf does. So if all of the creatures are removed from all graveyards, this dies.
Yeah.
But I have seen people talking about maybe this is like another thick Tarmo type beater that you put into Hogakian lists of
could be in Death Shadow, you know, like
could be in Death Shadow.
Death Shadow doesn't hate big creatures.
The thing is that Death Shadow has a lot of spells and relies on individual big creatures as opposed to creatures in graveyards.
So the 60 card version has a lot of spells, but the 80 card version does have a lot of creatures because you're trying to maximize that Yorion synergy.
Zach, you and your 80 card version. Here's my mind on 80 card versions of anything. Yeah, you can play whatever you want in the 80 card versions of anything. You got 80 cards.
Just saying.
Play whatever.
Just
play it all.
We gotta, you know, look, someone's gotta use their Scourge of the Sky claims.
Somebody that we don't know.
It's gonna be me.
Somebody that is I don't think Cruel Somnophage is gonna get there.
No,
I think that the world that this is in, like it is Death Shadow, but it wants a different like you there isn't a land that's just going to put
hoop to jump
a
through.
bunch. But it's a way more difficult hoop that has a bigger deck building restriction that doesn't have incidental spells that take advantage of it. If this shows up in some cool list like that, sure. I don't think this is going to be in any tiered list anywhere.
Final thought. Because it's a sorcery, I think that on top of that, it's like even lower in the category of playable. If this was an instant mill 4, you could screw up a Doomsday or something like that. So unfortunately, I think this is just not good enough. But you know, who knows? Sometimes you just get to a point where you're like, I guess this can see play. Now we can talk about Questing Druid, Questing Dryad.
We're gonna throw Decadent Dragon up on the screen real quick just for you Jund sickos. Don't play it though; it's too expensive. No. All right, Questing Druid, 1 and a green. It's a human druid. It has Seek the Beast as its adventure. It's an instant for 1 and a red. Exile the top 2 cards of your library until your next end step. You can play those cards, and then it has Queer and Dryad's text on its front side. It's 1/1 for 1 and a green. Queer and Dryad's text. Now, is power creep a problem?
So here's the thing. And we've said this a million times with cards like this. The cheaper side has to be playable. Well, in this scenario, both sides of this card are playable, but do we want to play them? Now, it is an instant speed draw 2, right? Like, if you can make this, like, do this on your opponent's turn, you have your whole next turn to make these cards work.
The area that I always fall back on, where they're like, yeah, red is impulsive, and they're chaotic, and they're passionate, and their card draw needs to reflect those qualities, and then red just gets better card draw than blue. Like they're like, the game is fast enough that they're like, yeah, you can only use it until your next end step, but it's an instant. And so the downside to all of the effects that you're like, yeah, you can use it, but only until your next turn. It's like, well, I mean, if I can play any card off the top at instant speed, that means that if I catch a force or whatever, I can still pitch cast it from exile and then play the follow-up on the whatever. So it's like, no, so this is just better card draw than blue gets, right? Like, when they're like, yeah, no, it's red's temporary. It's temporary, Phil, okay? And temporary means it's better because the games only last so long.
Yeah. So, and I honestly, I don't think that Questing Dryad saw play outside of, standard in like 2012 in the Delver decks that were playing green as well. So
no, I do think though that like in the Jundian world, like between this and the next card that we'll talk about in Mosswood Dreadknight, like the grinding power of incidental 2-drops that are being given to the Jund guys in this set is really deep. Like, yeah, they're all modal. They all have really relevant effects that are grindy as shit.
Yep.
And they all have like good stats. Like, I get that, Questing Druid, you having to put some time and effort to pump the counters on it, but like, it's not hard in Legacy to churn through, especially if they're giving you 2-mana draw 2s.
Yeah. Before we talk about Mosswood Dreadknight, let's talk about Scalding Viper, which I had lower on the list, but is still here. That is another adventure. That's a 2-mana 2/1 that says whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value 3 or less, Scalding Viper deals 1 damage to that player. And then it also has Steam Clean, which is a sorcery. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So
I don't think this
Vapor Snag. That's not the card.
It's a 2-mana Void Snare.
Yeah, Void Snare. That's the card.
I don't think this is play because it's a sorcery speed, but because Brazen Borrower exists in the same kind of decks that we want this, and that's just a better card.
Well, yeah, and on top of that, so yeah, Brazen Borrower exists, and for the people that want to do that, and then Eidolon of the Great Revel exists for the people that want to do that, right? Like
this is a softer version of both of those cards, and that's where it's like, hey, you get a little bit of both, but this is doing it worse than both enough, and you can't play X1s in the Bowmaster format.
Exactly. All right, now let's talk about Mosswood Dreadknight.
Mosswood Dreadknight, 1 and a green, human knight. It's got a sorcery adventure called Dread Whispers, which is 1 and a black. Draw a card and lose a life. And then its creature side is a 3/2 with trample that says when it dies, you may cast it from your graveyard as an adventure until the end of your next turn. So
this is pure grind.
It's all grind. Both of these green 2-drops that have 2-mana sorceries are all grind cards. Both of them. It's in Jund colors.
2-mana spells, not 2-mana sorceries.
That's what I mean. 2-mana spells, but both of those spells are grindy.
Yeah.
And then both creatures are thick stuff that like is happy to trade for anything that you'd want.
3/2 for 2 is not terrible. Like,
well, it's a 3/2 for 2. It's a 3/2 trampler.
Up. Yeah.
It's a 3/2 trampler. Trample matters in a world where planeswalkers and incidental damage, especially if you're in a Jund deck that's like nickel and diming off of like Bolts and Kolaghan's command and stuff, like that stuff definitely matters. And this being able to like stand in the way, like, okay, let's say we're playing against Death Shadow, right? The fact that this can just be like if you have the mana to go, this is just chumping and trading. I mean, not trading, but chumping and blocking at value. Like, it's really good. I mean. if there was a world where you could like where Jund was going to get the nod to be like a more viable competitive legacy deck, this is the set that's bringing it in.
This is the set, yeah.
Like these are efficient, good beaters on 2-drops that have solid effects that are both grindy, which means that okay, if I don't need the beaters and I need to go more controlling, I'm just going to grind you down.
Yeah.
But if I need to get aggressive, these can do it and get big real quick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll have to keep watching 90s MTG to see how Reed Duke changes his deck with the set.
Yeah, one Reedham Duke is he's been crushing with Jund, and I mean, if he can, but between these two creatures, I don't know if you would. I mean, Questing Druid, we'll have to see because the adventure is better, but the body is worse. Where Moss Dreadknight, we'll have to see, and nothing's taking over Bowmaster's slot.
No.
So, but like, there's not really any good 1-drops, right? So like, if your 1-drops are just going to be in your disruption space of like Thoughtseize and removal. But one thing is like when Mosswood Dreadknight dies, so like you can maybe open up some space for Cabal Therapy, and Questing Druid wants more spells in your deck. Mosswood Dreadknight lets you flash back your Cabal Therapy at value because then you can recast it for its adventure. Like there's some play. There's a lot of play with stuff that the deck already is interested in being in. And I mean, I think that like the biggest gainer from these top cards so far has been the Jund deck that doesn't exist.
Yeah. So you were talking about Werefox Bodyguard. You said Werewolf Bodyguard before. It's a Werefox.
Wow,
it's a huge difference.
Wow, I'm an idiot. I said
Elf Fox Knight. That's why I was looking in red when we were looking for this card.
Dude, I'm such an idiot. I said werewolf instead of
Werefox. I would have known Werefox Bodyguard is obviously a white card.
I can't believe, like, only me would think and say werewolf instead of werefox. I'm a total clown. I just wanted to point out this card that this card's one white for an Elf Fox Knight. It's a flash 2/2, and it has Fiend Artisan's text, and then it has the additional benefit of 1 and a white to sacrifice it to gain 2 life. Now, I just wanted to point this card out because this is a flash Fiend Artisan, but the bar is Skyclave Apparition. So as long as this thing doesn't remove permanence the way that Skyclave does, Skyclave will always get the nod, and Skyclave is the bar. So like this coming out and being like the best version of this effect to get rid of creatures, because it has flash and it is recruitable. It just points out that Skyclave is the bar. I don't think that's news, but it's if they ever print cards like this in the future that get it progressively better, nothing will be better than Skyclave because Skyclave permanently gets rid of permanence.
All right, so the next card is that I put down is Extraordinary Journey. That is XX blue for an enchantment that reads, when this enters the battlefield, exile up to X target creatures. For each of those cards, its owner may play it for as long as it remains exiled. Whenever one or more non-token creatures enters the battlefield, if one or more of them entered from exile or was cast from exile, you draw a card. This ability only triggers once each turn.
I want them to come up with a keyword for this ability. Triggers only once each turn. Just
it's called it's white.
Just say solo
white.
Or something. Or they use those words and they have to. There's got to be a way to condense that down to just keyword it. Limited solo.
Which
one
is
time.
Different. Limited means something different in Magic. So I had that.
Too expensive.
This is
not too expensive.
This is not Entreat the Angels or Terminus, but there is value here, and I don't think it'll see play. It's just like 1x off of the playable design of the format. Like it's
no. Like, this is not playable. Even this could have been blue X. This could have been blue X. It's still not good enough because you need to have a board already.
Well, here's what I'm thinking: is if you do this and you're playing like Lavinia, that's interesting, right? Because then you can just stop your opponent from bringing those creatures back ever. But yeah, like I said, assuming they don't have, it's a little cute.
No, because you can cast you may play them for as long as they remain exiled. They still have to pay the mana for them.
Oh, okay, never mind. Well, this card
and also Lavinia's non-creatures.
Yeah, this is better for that reason and worse for every other reason. So, moving on to Regal Bunnicorn. Regal Bunnicorn is
though?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Regal Bunnicorn is a 2 mana. That's 1 and a white for a XX, where X is equal to the equal to the number of non-land permanents you control. I mentioned this specifically because 8-cast does not does have a lot of non-land permanents in play at times. This
you
is
definitely
like
want
another
a Tarmogoyf.
construct. This is like
You
another
totally-
construct, right?
Yeah, you absolutely want another. You want a Tarmogoyf
Look,
that
Phil,
doesn't work with affinity.
80 card, an
That
80
doesn't. Yeah,
cast.
shoot. Once you're at 80 cast, yeah.
Eternal Dirtles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield. Moxfield is the best Magic the Gathering deck building website on the internet. You can create, share, and find decks from Commander to Legacy and even fan-supported formats like Pre-Modern and Old School. You can see all of our decks on our Moxfield. Follow the links below to stay tuned.
Yeah, 4x Regal Bunnicorn in your 80 cast deck. Dude, let's pour one out for Ingenious Prodigy. Blue X01 Skulk, when it enters the battlefield with X+1/+1 counters in the beginning of your upkeep, you can remove one of those counters to draw a card. Oh my god, dude. My 2013 senses are tingling. I would have loved this card.
Yeah. All right. Elvish Archivist. Elvish Archivist is 2 mana for an 0/1. That's 1 to green. For an Elf Artificer, whenever one or more artifacts enters the battlefield under your control, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. This ability triggers only once each turn. Whenever one or more enchantments enter the battlefield, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Again, I kind of just like mention this because like, hey, like,
whoa, Zach, come on. You're like, yo, Regal Bunnicorn in your 80 cast deck, but you're not talking about Elvish Archivist in your 80 cast deck?
I am. It literally says, just continuing my thoughts here on 80 card, 5 color, 8 cast. It's not good enough for Enchantress or 8 cast, though, because once per turn.
Yeah, but like as though your Saga didn't do enough, this would draw a card when your Saga ETBs.
Oh my god, it would be so good. Like imagine your Saga hits the board and you cast a 0 mana artifact and you draw a card and you put 2 +1/+1 counters on this guy.
Bro,
it's just, you're living in Christmas land.
You had all of those things that your deck otherwise would want, and then you paid 2 mana for this 2/3. Sick.
Yep. So good.
All right, well, quickly, let's talk about Godric, Cloaked Reveler.
Yeah, let's talk about Godric.
It's 1 red for a 3/3. It's a legendary human noble. It has haste and it has celebration, which is as long as 2 or more non-land permanents enter the battlefield under your control this turn, it becomes a dragon with haste and power and toughness 4/4 and flying with fire breathing that pumps up all your dragons. Now, we had to clarify. Zach, solved my problem of being an idiot clown when I said if it becomes a dragon with 4/4 flying and fire breathing, it doesn't say that the dragon has haste, but it doesn't say that it loses all other abilities. It says it loses all other creature types. So it will still have haste. Yeah. So the effect of the reason I don't think that this is necessarily good enough, but I'm not off of it as a potential player because in a world of Teferi Time Raveler, we have to start getting used to looking at haste as better than flash.
Yeah.
Haste is just better than flash in the world of planeswalkers that get immediate value and Teferi locking down the stack.
Well,
so this with any land, when you play your 3rd land and then you play this, it's a 4/4 with haste and flying.
Yeah.
That is like, that means that it's just Boo hitting the board a turn early that can snipe a planeswalker, snipe something else. Yes, your opponents can bounce this thing with Karakas, but because it has haste, if you just time it where like, okay, you attack, untap, play it, then they...
Well, we're talking about this Jund deck that doesn't exist, right? Fetchlands set this guy off.
Well, Fetchland set this guy off as the Fetchland by itself every turn, but like a land in general plus this will turn it into the haster. Yeah. You know,
I'm saying like in subsequent turns, like just you're like, and I'll play Fetchland. I'll go get a land. Boom, he's a 4/4 again. Hit you in the air. You know, like easy to keep him going.
As more decks adopt the One Ring, just being able to chunk people for damage to like pressure that side of the ring is also important. Like
I think they didn't play it last turn.
I get that. Like, but the thing is, like, if you have to take a turn off for like other setup or whatever that they have to then spend maybe resources dealing with, and then you just get to hit them here. I was just saying that like Godric has enough going on in the world of Teferi, and Teferi being the best part or a 4 of in the premier control deck in the format at the moment makes me think that like, you know how all of the Delver decks always have like that 3-drop in their sideboard for the matchups that go a little bit longer. Usually it's like the Hex or whatever.
True Name
or True Name or whatever that is. This feels like it's pretty hot in that space, right? Because it's very aggressive and it's not difficult to turn on the celebration part of the mode. And at a baseline, if it's a 3/3 on 3, if you cast it for 3 mana on turn 3, it's a 4/4 with haste. Every turn after that, any land drop, any creature, like plus like any land plus anything else, whether that's Bauble or whatever. It just cares about something hitting the table. It can even be tokens, like your Bowmasters turns this on for free.
Yep.
Right? Like there's enough ways to continue making this a 4/4 with haste and get it on the table, and like having a big Dargon in the air is not bad. Like of all the cards that we've talked about so far, like I'm sort of hot on this one for actually having a home by solving a role that some decks need.
It's funny, I'd be more interested in this card if it was 2 in a red instead of 1 and 2 red, but because it would fit into like the Stompy style decks.
No. But, Zach, you stop it. You stop that. This is them recognizing that they have to stop single pipping shit because Ancient Tomb is busted.
Well, I agree. It's funny because there is that dichotomy there because it does pump itself and you want the red mana to pump itself. So it's like, it doesn't belong in one of those decks anyhow. But like anytime I see a 3-drop, the first thing I'm thinking is like, can I get this out with Ancient Tomb?
Let us pray that WotC continues to double pip their spells.
Yes. Hard disagree. As a guy who likes to play his Ancient Tombs, but I get where you're going. So let's talk about Farsight Ritual. Farsight Ritual is another 4-mana bargain spell. It's 2 and 2 blue. Look at the top 4 cards. This is an instant. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. If this spell was bargain, look at the top 8 cards of your library instead. Put 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. I only say all that to say this. If bargained, this is pretty close to a dig through time. But 4 mana is a lot of mana.
4 mana is too much mana because
to not cast stuff for free, right?
To just not cast, like this would be great if it would cast stuff for free. When I was thinking about, they're clearly doing it not to dig through time, and if they really wanted to like make this playable in the space of if you bargain you get a huge boon, is looking at 4, 8, 6, whatever number that they're going to look at. But if bargain gave a discount, if bargain was like the spell costs 2 less if you bargained,
or if you got like
dig through time,
3 cards instead of 2, if you were digging through overtime, like the Dovin Bond like thing, if you're getting like 1 additional card out of this for bargaining, which makes sense because you're getting rid of something, would have been like better.
Even if there was some middle ground where it was like 1 blue, and if at 1 blue you just impulsed, but at 1 blue bargained, you dug through time. Like, maybe that's like a playably interesting, but at this rate, it's too steep.
Yeah. Sleep Cursed Fairy. This is the 1 mana 3/3 with flying. Ward 2, Fairy Wizard. When it enters the battlefield, it enters tapped with 3 stun counters on it, and then you can pay 1 blue to untap Sleep Cursed Fairy.
Do you want to explain stun counters to our loyal listeners?
Hey man, I have a Watcher in the Water deck, so I would love to explain stun counters to people. So stun counters, instead of untapping a creature that has stun counters on it, you remove a stun counter instead. So if you were to pay the mana to untap this, you would instead just remove a stun counter. So let's talk about what the play pattern looks like with this card. Turn 1, you play it, it's tapped, so it's not blocking, right? Turn 2, you untap, so you just remove a stun counter, it's still tapped, right? And it has 2 stun counters on it. So, oh no. So like now, if you're leaving mana open, turn 3, if you're leaving mana open, you try to untap this again, and on turn 3, it actually does untap, right? Because that's turn 1, you play it. Turn 2, you lost 1, so that's the first counter. Second counter, you untap. So it would lose its 3rd counter on the next turn, on turn 3. So it would still not be untapped. Now, this is not a Delver card, right? Like, that's what we're thinking when we see a 1 mana blue flying 3/3. The thing that's interesting about this card, and I think that Phil, you did a good job of pointing this out to me, is that it has Ward 2, and Ward 2's not nothing. Ward
2 is a lot.
Ward 2 is hard to deal with. It's a real, like, Ward 1 is like kind of like, oh, whatever, like I had to pay the extra 1, you stink. Ward 2 is like, it's basically like asking for an extra card from hand.
I want
asking for basically 2 extra turns of setup.
Dude, people who play removal spells, think about what it's like to have to kill an Esper Sentinel, right? Where you're like, I really need to pay this additional mana so they don't draw a card, right? That's Ward 1.
Yeah.
Imagine that. This is similar. Like, you know, I mean, the closest analogy that we have is Patchwork Automaton that literally has Ward 2.
Yeah.
That's going to hit way harder, but it's in an Ancient Tomb and only Ancient Tomb deck.
Yeah.
But I think Sleep Curse Fairy is in a nice space for something that's a little bit bigger than Delver, that wants to play a little bit more interactive and a little and fewer threats.
Well, you
and
know
what
what
I mean
you don't
by
want
that,
to do is play this in 80 card Death Shadow and then Yuri on it.
yeah, don't Yori on this card unless you're doing counter shenanigans, or you're playing Yorion, do whatever you want.
Crazy person.
I think that like Sleep Curse Fairy is a nice way to like have a thick, relatively resilient beater that's already flying, that gets in under your interaction points. So I think the value that is here is it being a mana sink is a nice way to not port yourself when you're playing interaction. So if let's say you were playing something that's slightly bigger than Delver, and you're like, I can either deploy another threat or I can hold up removal. Well, it's like if you hold up removal and then they don't take a line that you thought that they would, where that removal then lines up with something else, you can sink this to get a counter off. And that investment of otherwise unspent mana is not the worst, right? Like you committed to a line, but if your opponent didn't go into the play pattern that you were concerned about that made you hold up mana in the first place, then still getting to utilize that mana into something like this that then will give you a pretty reasonable payoff. Like a good way to think about the spell.
I was just saying it's on the same level as casting Beseech the Mirror when you have nothing else to do as a diabolic. You know,
it's incidental, right? Yeah, the cost of
like, this is fine. I have to do it. Yeah.
If the airline is gonna fly people in the sky with an empty seat, they can just give it. They should just give it to somebody for free. That seat is going to be empty regardless.
Yeah.
For Sleep Curse Fairy, I think that this is like, imagine if it said suspend 3 for a blue mana.
Yeah.
Right. Except it's on the board, so like you can remove suspend counters from it if you have excess mana. Or people can remove it if they want to spend time doing it before you can untap. But what I like about this card is that let's say you do get it down on 1, right? The pending threat of how they would then have to navigate when it becomes untapped, like they have to, like, if you're playing a planeswalker, right? Well, do I want to tick down my planeswalker now, knowing that the Sleep Curse Fairy is going to untap and then attack it? Do I have a removal spell for it? If so, I'm going to need a removal spell that doesn't get countered by Ward 2. Like, I think that this is not the Delver card, but I think that there is space for this card to be playable in spots where it would be desirable because it's cheap.
Yeah.
You know, and because trading with spot removal, it's always going to trade up and trade up significantly.
Let's just hope our opponents don't twins and blink it out and then make it come back into play.
No, that's great because then they're playing twins in their deck.
This is true. And then they followed up by casting twins, and you're like, it's got Ward 1.
I'm so happy if they're casting twins against me.
Yes. All right, so let's talk about the old Spellbook Vendor. Spellbook Vendor is a 1 and a white for a human peasant, vigilance 2/2. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 1. When you do, create a sorcerer roll attached to target creature you control. Sorcerer roll says that whenever this creature attacks, scry 1 and it gets +1/+1.
So at the baseline, this is a 2 mana 3/3 with vigilance.
Yeah, I mean, it would be the next turn it would be because it's at the beginning of combat. So like,
so you play this on your turn, main phase 1,
and then you
combat.
hit somebody with
Well, if you have no other creature, then you just attach the sorcerer roll to it. So it's a 2 mana 3/3 vigilance.
But you have to pay the 1.
Oh, you have to pay. Oh, yeah. It's mana gated.
It is mana gated.
Let us pray that WotC mana gates more shit. But WotC, we love mana gate.
Praise be, brother.
Praise be WotC for double pipping and mana gating.
I should just start. You're like, let us pray. Be like, Brother Phil, please tell us what's going on. Anyhow,
just WotC making good choices to not just bust things wide open.
Yep. Lord Skitter's Blessing.
My guy just skipping over Hornlock Whale. Wow.
Hornlock Whale. All right. Hornlock Whale.
Just
Hornlock Whale.
skipping over.
Hornlock Whale is a 6 mana creature with flash and ward 2, and it says when it enters the battlefield, Enters the battlefield tapped unless it's your turn, and then its adventure is a Lagoon Breach. Owner of target attacking creature you don't control puts it on top or the bottom of his library. You're joking about this, right? This is a joke.
Was it funny though?
All right, we're skipping right over Lord Skitter 2 and going right to his blessing. Lord Skitter's blessing is a 1 in a black enchantment that says when it enters the battlefield, create a Wicked token roll attached to any target creature you control. Wicked is if the creature dies, if the creature would be put in the graveyard, each opponent loses 1 life. It gets +1/+1. And then at the beginning of your draw step, if you control an enchanted creature, you lose a life and you draw an additional card. So it's kind of like a 2-mana Phyrexian Arena.
Yes. Assuming you have a creature.
I just like this as like another, just another like consideration for a deck like what's called 8-cast Death Shadow, where like I want to lose life. I'm looking for payoffs to lose life in Death Shadow, because only having 4 Death Shadow in the 60 card deck or the 80 card deck, I feel like I need something else, Phil. I need like 2 more cards in the deck that pay me off for doing all this work and losing all this life, and I'm just not seeing it right now, and it's driving me nuts. And this card is close. It's interesting, but I'm not getting paid to lose life. I'm just losing life to do a thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
You want
I want another Death Shadow
5 through 8.
Yeah. That's why I'm messing around with Scourge of the Skyclave. Like, this card ain't good, but it might be like playable. Like I said, this is the reason why I'm looking at it, is because the 80 card version of the deck, you definitely need more than 4 payoffs. Like, it's just like with the 80 card version of the deck, you want to play 6 pitchable Force of Will cards, because like you just need to for consistency's sake. And I think that's the case with the 80 card version of the deck too. Enough with the 80 card shenanigans. We'll talk about the next card, which is the End.
Yeah, I just want to point out that I appreciate you wanting copies 5 through 8 of Death Shadow, and Lord Skitter's Blessing is not it.
No, it is not. It is not. So let's talk about the End. This is the card that might actually be that card, right? So this is a instant for 2 and 2 black, and it says this spell costs 2 less if your life total is 5 or less. What's that? What was that called in Innistrad? Fateful Hour.
Fateful Hour.
Fateful Hour.
Yeah.
It has Faithful Hour, right? Fateful Hour, not Faithful Hour. Exile target creature, planeswalker. Search its opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of the card with the same name of the permanent. Exile those. Shuffle, and then you draw a card equal to each exiled card from their hand this way. I'm
going to jump in and say I don't think it's playable because the floor is so bad.
The floor is terrible on this card, but we're getting like
a card is only as good as its floor, dude.
With the lens of what that's not true. Look at Death Shadow. Boom! It dies.
No.
Turn 1 Death Shadow. I lose.
No, dude, the floor is it compels you to play good cards.
Yes. So the End is interesting in that it's a design space that I want them to work in, but they're not working in it. What did I actually say about this card? Is this that payoff? Literally from the previous thing that I said, it was like Death Shadow, but I need to know why I'm playing this and losing life. So I just mentioned it because like we're seeing design space that like pays you to lose life, but it's not paying you enough. All right, so the next card is, where are we at here? Spiteful Hexmage. When Spiteful Hexmage enters the battlefield, create a cursed roll token and put it on target creature you control. It is a 1-mana 3/2 human warlock.
Yeah, so if it's the only creature that you can attach the sorcery to, the roll to, then it becomes a base power and toughness 1/1. So it's a 1-mana 1/1. But I think that this card is actually hotter than we think because of the incidental value that it gives you for making another game object. Like these game objects that want to be bargained is just really hot. So like the idea that if you're on the Beseech side and you wanted to play the more aggressive Beseech stuff that's not combo, between this and Bowmasters, now you have 8 creatures in your deck that are actually giving you something to bargain. Yeah. And that there is value in that, particularly because Spiteful Hexmage, I get, is a 1. You want to play it on 1. And if you do, it's just a 1/1, and that sucks. But if you're playing any number of the bargain stuff to remove it, or then it becomes a 3/2. I mean, also a 3/2 on the ground isn't going to be, changing paradigms all that much. Yeah. But the other side is that, like, you can, if you're putting the roll token on you control onto a creature that doesn't matter. Again, Bowmasters doesn't need to get better. But like, if you put your base power and toughness 1/1 on either the Orc or the Bowmaster, on the army or the Bowmaster rather,
army just goes better.
The army is just getting a pump.
Yeah,
and then the Bowmaster, it doesn't matter because the ability is what you care about.
The 1/1 is the 1/1 is a 1/1. Yeah.
So like, if there's that world of, like, what you were talking about, of like the Jundian style thing that just needs some number of bargain payoffs, having a little aggressive 1-drop on the down low is pretty good. So I mean, I don't think this will see play because I don't think a 3/2 is a good enough payoff even for a single mana. But I think that the most appealing part of the card is actually the game object that it produces.
All right. Well, the most appealing part of the card is actually the negative part of the card. It's wild. Gadwick's First Duel. This is a saga for 2 mana, and its first one is create a curse roll and attach that up to 1 target creature, so it can be to anybody. Then it's Scry 2 for its second chapter. Then the third chapter is you may cast your next instant or sorcery spell with mana value 3 or less this turn. Copy that spell, and then you can choose new targets for the copy. So this is a way to get rid of a creature, a way to like streamline your draws, and it's a doubling effect.
I want to point out it doesn't get rid of the creature. It makes the creature base power and toughness 1/1. And if the creature that you're trying to get rid of, if you care about the ability, it does not solve that problem.
This is true. I mean, it is removal if you're getting rid of a Tarmogoyf or something.
Yes, if you're getting rid of something that is,
I guess that your opponent is not the thing you want to get rid of, because that would just give it a +1 power. But you get what I'm saying.
Yes, if you wanted to put it on your opponent's Troll of Khazad-dûm or their Death Shadow
or their Grizzlebrand,
then, and assuming that you're not dead, but you're definitely dead if they have a Grizzlebrand in play.
It's not great.
Then to the end of Gadwick's First Duel, if the flavor text, if the flavor of this card is telling me anything about what happened in Gadwick's First Duel, it's that he lost.
I can only tell by the art, but it looks like he might have turned into a chicken. I'm not sure.
It's unfortunate all around for him. Yeah,
it's not great. Anyhow, the next card we want to talk about is Up the Beanstalk. This is a card I'm really interested in. Up the Beanstalk is a 2-mana enchantment that reads: when Up the Beanstalk enters the battlefield, and whenever you cast a spell of mana value 5 or greater, draw a card. So it's giving you immediate value for its trading. It's just 2 mana, draw a card, right? And then it's a game object that is an enchantment, so it can be bargained. But Force of Will. What are some other great, there are so many great 5+ mana spells that we're casting for free. Fury. What else, Phil?
All of the 5-drop spells that exist in the format, which is pretty much all of the pitch spells and
Terminus. Terminus. You could put this
Terminus.
in. Yeah.
This card is obviously very good with exactly those types of things, assuming that grinding is what matters.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of matchups where grinding matters. I'll say I like this card. I'm definitely going to own 4 copies of this card. I'm going to experiment with this card because it says draw a card, and that's what I like to do. But I will also point out my grudge.
Oh. The grudge.
I have a grudge.
Grudge
if I could chop the if I could chop the beanstalk down, I would, Zach.
Okay.
And you know why?
Because you hate giants.
WotC did so many good things as we've prayed to on this cast. They've double pipped many of their spells. They've mitigated many of their spells. These are good checks and balances, Zach.
Yeah.
But when a card just incidentally cantrips for free, I think to myself, do you believe in this design or do you not? Because if this design were playable and that you wanted to make it good, then why you let me replace itself for free? That makes me think you're lazy. Make this a 1-mana spell that doesn't cantrip, and now we're talking.
Okay.
I feel like obviously this card is good, but it is good like the ability of cantripping for 5-mana spells, because we already do a lot of that for these free pitch spells, is good, right? So
Sure.
that effect is good.
Mhm.
But for some reason, this cantripping itself, even though I'm going to play it and enjoy it, and that's great, it also irks me because I go, okay, anytime something just incidentally for free cantrips itself, it means that the card didn't cost you anything other than the mana. And if the mana is not the thing that we specifically care about exactly, and that's going to determine the game, then the opportunity, like, I don't know, man. Like it does. Like I want to be excited about the card, but at the same time, I just go, it's just more air.
When I
Like,
see this
it's
card,
just
I
free
think,
air.
yes, I would spell snare this card.
Do you know what the opportunity cost of this card is? It's not. There isn't, because it cantrips.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, but it cantrips in a way that isn't like baleful. Like it's baleful Strixien in some way, but like the 1/1 that maybe trades isn't a card advantage engine.
Yeah.
Whereas like this one is.
Yeah.
But it I don't know.
Well,
it just
Phil,
feels like
what
it's
I
a card you don't.
What
you
I
don't
love
work
about this
for it.
card
You don't
is that
earn it.
What I love about this card is that it's good in multiples. You know,
right?
You cast the second one, and the next time you force of will something, you draw 2 cards.
You know what this
card
is
off of force of will.
You know what this looks like? What this is similar to? Imagine if this was single green and it had the effect of cantripping on 5 or CMC greater, but didn't cantrip itself, but then had cycling too.
Okay.
That's what this card is.
No, but like I wouldn't want to play.
But they stack, so it's better.
Yeah.
Yes, I know what you're saying. But like you see where I'm going, right? Like when something has cycling and it's otherwise an incidentally free effect, you're like, oh, it's free because it has cycling. I can just cycle it. It's free. It's free. I don't get me wrong. I'm very excited for Up the Beanstalk. It's definitely a playable. You should 100% have 4 copies if you ever play any type of grindy thing. Like besides Beseech the Mirror, like this is the only one that I'm like, this is a slam dunk as like a playable card that doesn't need any additional hoops to jump through beyond putting it in your deck. But like the design feels very uninspired to me.
Well, let's talk about another card that might see play. Hearth Elemental is a 5 and a red for a creature elemental 4/5, and it says this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the number of cards in your graveyard that have instant, sorcery, or adventure. And then its adventure is Stoke Genius, not Stroke Genius, Stoke Genius. It's a sorcery for 1 red that says discard your hand and draw 2 cards.
Yeah, I was texting you and Nate about this, thinking that like maybe there's a world where this is like another spell that's another creature payoff for your
Phoenix deck,
Arclight Phoenix deck, your blue-red Arclight deck. But I think this is also just probably too cute and not strong enough, because the 4/5, yes, it can, or the 4/5 coming down for 1 mana is great, but if we've learned enough, a 1 mana 4/5 is not good enough, as are the days of Gurmag Angler are well behind us.
Yeah. All right, let's go up to Royal.
Bro.
What?
We got to talk just real quick. You're the infect guy. Royal treatment exists.
That's what I'm saying. Let's go to Royal treatment.
Bro. We got to talk about royal treatment.
Let's talk about royal treatment.
Zach, we got to talk. Zach, were you
going
to
talk about royal treatment? I've been waiting all day to talk about royal treatment.
Zach's been waiting all day to talk about royal treatment. We got 1,000 subscribers, and he was like, "I want to talk about 1,000 subscribers, and I want to talk about royal treatment."
Bow. Royal treatment is interesting. So it's a green instant for 1 green. It says target creature gains hexproof until end of turn. Create a royal roll token. Royal roll is +1/+1 and ward 1. So that's interesting. Every time like they put an infect card out that I'm like, this would be good. Infect's in such a terrible place right now. Bowmasters is I thought Bowmasters wasn't going to be a problem for infect, but the more I think about it, the harder it is to glean advantage and use your tools that deck has, like Ponder and Brainstorm, to really figure out a good way to get around Bowmasters. Bowmaster shoots all of your cards. it sneaks in and gets everything. And yeah, of course, like, sure, it's great that this could, like, 1 mana to 2 mana, hexproof and +1/+1 and ward. So it, like, builds itself up a little bit. But, like, I don't know. I just don't think the deck does enough right now. I do like that, like, Venerable Rot Priest is a 1/2. So that's cool. And that like builds, giving that ward is wonderful. But I just don't see it. I just don't see Infect being like a contender anymore. I think what we need to live in a situation, we're almost there, right? Where people are prioritizing Storm decks, which is why I started playing Infect in the first place. I was like, people are on combo or on like Deathrite Shaman decks. This is when I started playing Infect. I was like, and I can't play Rug Delver because you know what sucks? Tarmogoyf in a meta that is either too slow for or just gets instantly blocked or eaten up. The graveyard gets eaten up, and it's just not you're just in a bad spot. So Infect gave me a chance to still play that like tempo-y game where I could stop the combo decks, and I had like a speed kill win, but I could also berserk over top of these creatures that were trying to chump me and whatnot. I don't think that Royal Treatment is getting me where I want to be. I think I'd just rather play like Blossoming Defense or Vines of Vastwood in this scenario. I just don't like just hexproof and +1/+1. The ward's nice and all, but you're already giving hexproof. You're already blanking the spell. Making it more of a pain in the butt to target the thing is like incidental at best. Because if they're gonna get you, it's not because you gave your creature +1/+1. Like if you're gonna go all the way, like no one's playing Gut Shot right now. Like you're not like getting them from that. It's just it just gets around Orcish Bowmasters a little bit, or like instantly stops you. Like if your opponent's like, oh, I'll kill your guy with this, and you can be like, well, I'll save my other guy with this. I don't know. I'm not like 100% on it. If it said give a royal roll to any creature you control, I'd be more on par with this card. I think that would be a really interesting effect where like you're like, I hexproof this guy, give that guy +1/+1, and like totally blank your play, right? Like I can do two things, right? This is doing one thing twice, basically, which is basically just giving something. It's protecting it from dying, and it's protecting it from dying again, and it's preventing you from killing it again. It's it's doing three things as it were, but like it's only doing three things to one creature, and a lot of times you're in a situation where you want to do multiple things. You want to cast Symbiosis, and Symbiosis costs 2 mana, and it's too much to make work. Do you know what Symbiosis is, Phil?
No.
It is a Urza's Legacy card. 2 mana. 2 target creatures get +2/+2, but you have to have 2 creatures to make it work. It was a big draft card back in the day. But if there was a card like that for 1 mana that like allowed you up to 2 creatures, I would play that over something like this.
Yeah, I have nothing to add as I'm not an Infect player.
Notes. So all right, let's go to Likeness Looter. Let me look for that one because I think that's down.
Shout out to Tough Cookie for your 80 cast deck.
Oh yeah. I can turn non-creature artifacts into 4/4s. Yeah, that would be sick.
And you make food tokens, bro?
Oh my god!
I mean, this thing is +2/+2 for your constructs, my guy.
Where is Likeness Looter? Are we all the way like down in?
Likeness Looter is in blue-black.
Oh, okay. That's all the way. Yeah, okay. Here, we're going all the way down. All right. Likeness Looter is the new Lazav. A 1 blue, 1 black creature, fairy shapeshifter, flying, tap to draw a card and discard a card. It's a 1/1. X. Likeness Looter becomes a copy of target creature in your graveyard with mana value of X, except it has flying, and this ability activated only as a sorcery. Phil, you're the Lazav guy.
I'm a Lazav guy. Now, there's upsides and downsides to this card. The upside, it's not legendary, so it doesn't have to give a shit about Karakas, which is delightful. The other upside is that it's flying, so whatever it turns into, it retains flying. So
Flample's pretty good.
So it's a flying trampler, which is pretty sweet. Being a looter is probably better than the ETB Surveil in some cases. Not always, because this assumes that your creature untaps, and if you're untapping with this card, ideally you're turning it sideways and doming for 12, and you're not looting. But in the spots where you're not doing that, having a looter is maybe better than Surveil. So there's some trade-off there.
Mm-hmm.
The downside about this, though, is this came out after Orcish Bowmasters, and your 2-mana 1/1 that doesn't do anything. That if there was a 0-mana card that this could copy, then maybe.
Or
but because it, well, as more an Martica, I've seen a Koldakar, my guy. Or as more an Martica, I've seen a Koldakar.
That would good. That'd be good.
But this meaning on rate, it's still 3 mana to turn to make your Dreadnought, assuming the Dreadnought's in your yard.
Yeah.
In reality, though, if you spent a mana to put the Dreadnought into the yard, it's 4 mana over the course of your early turns to put this creature into play that is potentially either blanked by a Bowmaster because this is activated only as a sorcery.
Yeah.
So you can't maneuver.
Yeah.
They can. That means that this card is likely priced out because that card exists.
Yeah.
But if there was a world where you had enough density, or maybe there was like a world where you're like, I want some number of Ozav, but I don't want all 4 because it is legendary, which means that it's not good in multiples, and it gets bounced by Karakas, that maybe you do some kind of split for your tier 8 deck. I'm with you.
Yeah. All right. Well, then let's talk about Agatha's Soul Cauldron. This is a 2-mana...
I'm going to let you talk about it because I don't understand what it does.
This is a 2-mana legendary artifact. Says you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate the abilities of creatures you control. Creatures you control with +1 counters on them all have activated abilities of all creatures exiled with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Exile target card from a graveyard. When a creature is exiled this way, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So I'm not going to I'm reading the bottom part, the tap this and exile target creature part, as like a thing that also gives creatures a +1/+1 counter, right? Is this better than Hearse? I don't think it's better than Hearse. So I think it's worth mentioning because there may be something that can be done with this card later on. Maybe Phil.
Yeah, what this card does is it turns whatever creature you have into a Necrotic, and that's pretty sweet, right? It's like it exiles a card, it puts a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control. That creature, now that it has a +1/+1 counter on it, can use the activated abilities of exiled creatures, and it can spend mana as though mana of any color to do so.
I mean, let's be for real. If you exile Grizzlebrand with this and you get to draw 7 cards, it's pretty good.
That is good, but the downside though is that this assumes that A, you have a creature to do it. B,
you don't need
have
a creature.
This on board.
You can just exile a card, right?
But then you would need to exile something else because the creature, in order to have the ability, needs a +1/+1.
Yeah, counter. I'm just saying, like, you can use this as protection. You don't have to have the creature.
The area where I think when you said, "Is this better than Hearse?" I think that's the act comparison, because if you're playing this card, the floor is that it's a 2-mana worse Hearse.
Yeah.
And if you're down for worse Hearse, because Hearse hits 2 cards, and any cards, instead of this, which only hits creature cards. Oh, no, target card. Okay, yeah, so it's literally half of a Hearse. So if at a baseline you're down for half a Hearse, like if that's reasonable for you, and then there's the heavy upside of this being able, if you have some creatures in your deck with activated abilities.
+1/+1 counters is really what it comes down to.
No, I think what we were talking about of like how good is the floor, right? The floor is this is just a Relic of Progenitus for 2 mana, right?
2 mana.
But then, the upside is if you are in a heavier creature deck if you were in the deck that was playing Hearse and you're like, well, there is some upside of getting +1/+1 counters as opposed to having a thick card or drive, then maybe this is a little bit better. The downside is that it's legendary. The upside is that you can turn everything into a Necrotic.
The upside also is that Hearse, if you want to start attacking with Hearse, it turns Hearse off as far as like being like a reactive thing, whereas this stays reactive because it's going to stay untapped after you like on your turn, right? And you can wait until your opponent's turn to activate it, and then attack with your creatures that are slowly growing or whatnot. I think we probably spent too much time on this card as far as like why is it like worth playing. It's just another option for a deck that plays Ancient Tomb to like have a graveyard piece.
It's another option, but like Unlicensed Hearse is an all-time great relic effect that exists in the format
Yeah.
and for Eternal formats. Now, a lot of that is absorbed by Urza Saga existence, which just compels you to play something like Soul Guide instead.
Yeah.
So you don't get into this space. But like for the decks that aren't playing, so Urza Saga crowds a lot of the space.
Yeah.
But for the decks that aren't playing Urza Saga that are looking to those types of effects, if you were looking for a hearse that instead is pumping your team, if you have enough of a team to pump, then the incidental effect of being able to go off by making a Necrotic Ooze, that's appealing. This card will likely show up in sideboards in some decks somewhere in your Legacy environment, so be prepared for that.
Yeah. All right. Next is Sir Ginger, the Meat Ender.
Meal Ender.
Meal
Ender. Meat Ender's way better though. Meat Ender's way better.
I was like, whoa, because like you know, cookies aren't meat. This is a 2-mana 3/1 legendary artifact creature food knight. So it has trample, hexproof, and haste as long as an opponent controls a planeswalker. That is the relevant text on this card, by the way. Whenever another artifact you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Sir Ginger and scry 1, and you can sacrifice it to gain life equal to its power. I mentioned this because this is an interesting card as like, oh, I'm just going to slam your Narset so I can start drawing cards again in 8-cast. And, because you're on Baubles, you can sacrifice the Baubles to give it a +1. I don't think that this is a card that I would personally play, but it is interesting design space for a creature that wants to specifically punish planeswalkers, but it also isn't a totally bad rate for 8-cast.
I actually think this is interesting because this is flashy. It's a lore character. It's this legendary 2-drop artifact that's riding a gingerbread horse, and it's it's calling out planeswalkers specifically, which is something that we all need in this world. But I actually think it's just a worse Patchwork Automaton.
Is it even worse than Patchwork Automaton? Is it a worse Slash Panther?
No, I think this is better than Slash Panther in the decks that would want it.
Yeah.
Because it not being bottlenecked once per turn, and the scry is not nothing. Like that, you being able to turn your baubles into scries.
Yeah, scry and draw is pretty good, right?
That's pretty hot. Like turning everything into a pseudo like all your baubles into pseudo preordains. Like that's not nothing. Like in my mind, this is like another nice addition for maybe like the blue painter decks where scrying to get to a combo is really hot.
And let's remember, there are reasons to have legends in that deck, right? Your Otawara, is a thing. There's some other reason I forget. So there was a version of the deck I was thinking about where maybe you decide to play Mox Amber, right? Like with Sai and Emery and this, like Mox Amber becomes slightly closer to playable.
Mox Amber doesn't tap for a color with this, unfortunately.
Wah wah.
Colorless isn't a color.
Boo!
Colorless ain't a color.
Get him out of here.
80 cast
get
deck. Get it out of here.
All right, back to regular 8-cast then. All right, we got the Iron Crag, which is another 2-mana artifact. This is a 2-mana artifact that produces 1 colorless mana. It's a legendary artifact, by the way. Whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may have the Iron Crag become a legendary equipment artifact named the Everflame Hero's Legacy. If you do, it gains Equip 3, and Equip creature gets +3/+3 and loses all our abilities. Maybe this is the reason why we want the legendary creatures, Phil. What do you think?
So this card's unplayable, but what I have learned is that every plane in the multiverse needs some kind of mythical slab of rock. So
the Hell Vault.
Here we have the Hell Vault. We got the Iron Crag. Give me some others. Where are some others? There's got to be others.
Is there one in Lord of the Rings?
I don't know, man. I like this. This gave me Hell Vault vibes.
Yeah, it does.
And I was like, man, there's a lot of legendary. Just there's a rock over there. That thing is iconic.
Well, let's talk about this. The card in this set that I'm the most into.
What's the stone? The Alexander sword is in the stone. What's that stone?
The sword in the stone.
Yeah, where he pulls the sword out, and he's the only person who can do it.
King Arthur?
Yeah, he pulls the sword out of the stone, right?
What about
Am I thinking of the wrong story?
Yeah, that's King Arthur, the sword in the stone. That's Merlin.
Yeah, but what's the stone called in that story?
There's no name for the stone. The stone, dude. The
it's
sword
just the stone?
and the stone.
No wonder I forgot the names
Yeah.
because it doesn't exist. But the Iron Crag is a throwback to that story.
Yes, it is. But it's funny because so many people think that Excalibur and the Sword and the Stone are the same thing, and they're not. The Lady in the
What
Lake.
stone was Excalibur in?
No, Excalibur wasn't in the stone. It was given
was in
to
the
you
lake.
by the Lady of the Lake. Yeah, or
Yeah,
given to
which is Emery.
Yeah, Emery.
Where's Emery? Where's where's your equipment for that Emery's given you?
It's in your graveyard, my guy.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about the card. I think is actually the in my personal opinion. I think this is the card that I'm going to see the most play with, and that is Candy Trail. Phil, Candy Trail is a 1-mana artifact food clue. When it enters the battlefield, scry 2, and then I can sacrifice it to gain 3 life and draw a card for 2 mana and tap it.
I was really high on this card as another way to turn on Council's Deliberation and then also draw a card at instant speed for Miracles. And then I goldfished it and I was like, oh, it's unplayable.
Yeah, no, for Miracles, yes, I agree, it's unplayable. This is a card I would include as like a one of in 8-cast. I'm always like kind of looking for like one other one of in 8-cast to play, and this card does a few things. One, the life is not nothing, because sometimes you are in a situation where you've almost killed yourself with Ancient Tomb to gain the life. But getting this back with our girl Emery is an interesting, because it's more than a card that you're getting back, right? You're scry 2 and drawing a card and you're and the 3 life. So that to me that's better than getting a bobble back every turn. Even if I'm paying like the three mana total, you get to a point where you have enough mana to be like doing what you want to do. So
yeah, what you just said is how I know that I don't play enough 8-cast, because you being like, yeah, the mana doesn't matter that much, and I'm like, Emery Bobble is just Library of Alexandria.
Well,
and
it is, but Emery Bobble scry 2, gain 3 life, like that is, I'm only spending like 2 mana for this effect, right? Because I can offset that amount by the life that I'm gaining, right? Because I'm tapping an Ancient Tomb to do this, and then oh cool, I gain the 3 life. So I'm only really spending 2 mana on this effect, and the scry 2 and draw a card together, I feel like is worth that one mana.
Yeah, I would be curious to see what your findings are after you test with this card, because the art is hot. It reminds me of Unfinity, and I love it.
Yeah. All right,
bro. 3 bowls of porridge. Is it a flavor fail that 3 bowls of porridge doesn't cost 3 and it has 3 modes and they're just not powered up to? So like 3 bowls of porridge, it's a food. It activates, so it costs 2, it activates for 2, but then it gives you 3 modes, and one of which is a shock, but then another one gains you 3 life. Did they miss an opportunity to just go 3s down the line?
Didn't have that kind of mana, dude.
Dude,
she was broke.
If they did 3, if it was 3, 3, 3, 3, tap 3 creatures, like I get that that's busted
and
limited,
also
but
deal
like
3 damage, right?
3 damage, gain 3 life, tap 3 creatures, cost 3, activates for 3. Like there was an opportunity here for a lot of 3s, and they just
I do want to talk about one other card that's totally unplayable. But because we did the review of Maro's thing, I hit on this one, and I just wanted to bring this up real fast. There is a card called the Gruff Triplets. Yeah, Gruff Triplets, which is a 3/3 with trample that is a Satyr Warrior. That's the 3-billy goats Gruff, dude. I called that. 3-billy goats Gruff. That's pretty ridiculously bad as far as a Magic card is concerned.
It's pretty bad. Yes, and I'm going to also throw out some two honorable mentions that are also bad. Archive Dragon, best flavor text in the set that I can remember.
Okay, what does it say?
I'll read it. The picture is it's a blue dragon. It's a 4/6 with ward 2 for 4 blue, and when it enters the battlefield, it scries 2. It's not a playable. It's a draft chafe uncommon. But it's a picture of a dragon reading a book, and the quote in the flavor text is fascinating. It says here that dragons cannot read.
All right, that's good.
This is great. And
that's great.
My second shout out is Edgewall Inn. What a home run of a name, a home run of an art, and an absolute botch in that it is entirely unplayable.
Edgewall Inn, enters the battlefield tapped. Okay. Enters the battlefield, choose a color, add a mana of that color, or 3, return target creature that has an adventure from your graveyard to your hand and sacrifice it. Woo! That is bad.
It's unfortunate because that art,
it is not on the edge
that
at all.
that art, not even on the edge of playability. This art though is
it's pretty rad.
Exquisite.
That's great art. All right, let's talk about I have 4 cards from the commander set that I think that are worth like mentioning, talking about. So we've got Glawain. Let's call him Glawain. Still
okay.
Scrolling down here, trying to find it. Where are we at? Where is it at? Glawain. Glawain, Casting Director, is a 3/2 for 3 mana. That's 1, a green, and a white. Whenever Glawain, Casting Director, or another creature enters the battlefield, you can, under your control, choose 1. Create a royal roll, create a sorcerer roll, create a monster roll. Choose one of those.
I think this card does not do nearly enough for what you need it to in your 3-drop slot. But it is a sweet name.
I think the problem with this card is that one thing people aren't going to realize immediately if they're trying to play this is that you can only have 1 roll in at a time.
No, you can have 1 roll on 1 creature at a time. You can't attach multiple rolls to a creature.
Oh, okay, great. So that's
if you have different creatures, you can
that's
you
great.
can put different rolls on different
discussion.
creatures.
Because that does change my how I feel about rolls. So every creature can have 1 roll.
So the optimization is like this card is like good on rate in that like it comes in and by itself it's a 3 mana 3/4 with some amount of upside depending on the roll that you choose, and then makes all of your creatures better. But that is like maybe that's good as a 1 of Green Sun target for matchups where we're going to get into combat and we're doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, we're grinding it out.
We'll have to call up Strass and Dukes because I don't have enough knowledge to know if like that is even something that the world needs in their 3-drop slot when a lot of it's taken up by like Knight and Ramunap and stuff.
Just Stress, do you need a Birds of Paradise with +1/+1 and Ward 1? Do you want your bolts to get birded?
I think the sorcerer roll is the one that gives +1/+1 lets you scry, right? So I think that like being able to
when it attacks,
having more but having more ways to control the top of your library for selection.
Dude, Monster
that's probably
Bird of Paradise 1/2 flying trample. We were talking about how good Trample is, right?
Trampler, bro. The other card I want to talk about is the Court Cycle because there are other cards that bring in the Monarch, and the Monarch's get out of here mechanic.
Yep.
And
one of them is green,
and
it's 1 less mana than all the other ones.
Yeah, I wonder what could go wrong. So Court of Garenbrig is 1 green, and it says when it ETBs, you become the Monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among up to 2 target creatures. Then, if you're the Monarch, double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. So it makes all of your creatures huge, and by definition, the Monarch replaces itself because you'll at least get to the end of your turn, and your opponent can't take it from you.
So you're immediately doing +4/+4 with this card.
Again, dude.
And
if you believe in the card, like the cost of this card, is it's a pump spell that cantrips, and then if they don't take it back, you just
you don't get the +4/+4. You just get to draw a card because you have to wait till your upkeep. So there's
but I'm saying that like the value of the card is that it replaces itself. So even if they deal with it, they had to spend a resource to deal with it.
Yeah.
But like I don't think any of the other courts are too exciting at 4 because the One Ring exists and what you call it what's this Minsk exists, but Court of Garenbrig is like the one that's doing something significantly different for something significantly cheaper, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that one showing up in any deck that can cast it on turn 2.
All right, well, let's talk about Knick-Knack Ulf. Knick-Knack Ulf is a 1 and an X, 1 green and X for a creature Ulf. It is a 1/1, and it comes into the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, and it says, when this enters the battlefield, reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put any number of aura cards with mana value of X or less among them onto the battlefield, then put all the revealed cards that way that weren't on the battlefield, that weren't on the bottom of your deck and shuffle your library. Or no, in a random order, sorry. So this is interesting because it's not a space that Legacy really like aura cards is not a space that Legacy really deals in. And will it be? Probably not. But this is an interesting effect. It has that, like, I mean, a card you know all too well. It has that epic experiment kind of effect.
Yeah, I mean, the only world that I would see this in is in a world that can Gaia's Cradle, because you need to get enough mana. But then at the same time, you also then need aura cards, and unless there are aura cards that are also creatures that I'm unaware of to like load
Maybe
up,
some,
I
like,
don't know where
creatures when they come into play or something. Yeah, I don't know.
I think there's a good baseline for Legacy, which is if we're looking at a card and don't immediately see a home that it can slot into or a home that it creates by itself,
yeah,
it's probably not good enough.
It might not have a home. And nobody wants orphan magic cards.
I think there's one last card which I think is kind of cool, which is Loam Crafter Fawn.
Yeah.
Which is 2 and a green for a 3/3. When it ETBs, you can discard 1 or more lands. When you do, return that many target non-land permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. So it's just recall that you ETB, your life in the loam shenanigans. Like, it just gives you a way to convert those cards. It's a square statted 3/3 that's green sun zenithable, and the ETB lets you convert any amount of lands that you have into other permanent cards in your graveyard. That I mean, also the permanent cards means that you can also return. What are the other? I think like this is sort of feeding itself when it's suggesting as Loam Crafter Fawn that with life in the loam, loam is milling it. Yeah. You're playing with loam, you're milling your shit. Like this, I don't know if like there are other outlets to like Mox Diamond discards lands, and now this is letting you discard lands. Yeah. And I don't know if there's also space for like discarding for value that this could offer, but
I mean,
this card being able,
like in Vintage, like it's cool to get back your your Moxen or your Black Lotus and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Maybe I start playing this in 8-cast so that I can get back my stuff after everybody in the format decides to play Meltdown.
Yeah, bro. And 80 card cast has room for this.
Yeah,
so
I can play Life Alone in that deck. That way I can get back my Urza Sagas.
This card strikes me as the one where I'm like, I don't know if this makes a new home or anything, but it strikes me as another card in the Ramunap Excavator space where if you're playing with Loam or Green Sun Zenith or both, that this is just going to give you an incidental effect that is like really high value and can get you out of a lot of tight positions that you otherwise wouldn't, because loading up your hand, putting other lands in the graveyard, those lands that you just dumped into your graveyard, if you were loaded up on them, feed your Knight of the Reliquary or feed your Ramunap Excavator that then pulls those lands back out of the yard and lets you pick up like explorations or whatever. I don't know, like there's a lot like when we were talking about, it's like if we can't think of a home for Oof, we can think of homes for Loam Crafter Shamans. And so like I imagine every Green Sun Zenith player should own at least one of these.
Yeah. All right, well, that does it. That's all the cards. So thank you everyone who has subscribed to the channel. Amazing. Give this a like. Comment. Tell us what cards we missed. Of course, that stuff pushes the video. All that stuff. Have a good day, and thank you for watching, everyone. Hey, check out this new series we're working on where we go over all of Deep Magic and review it chapter by chapter. Have a good one.